My buddy Andrew and I hit the road headed for the Bundy Hill Off-Road Park. I figured this would be the perfect place to not only test the latest upgrades that I've made to my truck, but also a great spot for both of us to work on our off-roading skills and just have a great time. The Bundy Hill Off-Road Park is a former gravel mine, and it has over 300 acres of trails specifically designed for ATVs, ORVs, Jeeps, bikes, side-by-sides, and full-size rigs, of course. Their trails range from hood-deep water to rock climbs to steep sandhill climbs and just about everything in between. We even found the drag strip. You can see from these drone shots just how big this place really is. Like many off-road parks, they require orange flags to be installed on vehicles for added visibility. Luckily, I was able to bolt mine directly to the new bumper, but Andrew had to do a little drilling. Once we got these installed, we headed out to explore and see what they had to offer. Neither of us had been here before, so we wanted to spend a little bit of time driving around and checking out the different obstacles. One concern both of us had was that a lot of these obstacles were designed for side-by-sides. We wanted to make sure we didn't damage our vehicles if we could avoid it, so we did a little bit of extra scouting just to make sure. One of the benefits of an off-road park is it allows you to practice your skills in a somewhat controlled environment. Unlike rock crawling, spinning your tires in sand does not help you to get traction. It usually just makes you get stuck. My goal on this obstacle is to not spin my tires at all and really practice for those sandy trails that are so common in the Midwest. Just like that, enough speed to get over the obstacle without spinning my tires, getting stuck, or making it harder for the next person.
Alright, this part's easy. You get up here and just keep your speed going. Yep, right there, just keep your speed. You spin a little bit. You got plenty of room on this side. You made that look easy.
This is my buddy Andrew's rig. It's a 2020 Jeep Gladiator Sport. He's running a 2.5-inch lift with Bilstein suspension all the way around. He's also got 37-inch BFG KO2 tires on Method race wheels. He's upgraded to a Fox steering stabilizer and done a handful of other upgrades.
There's an area where I got really tipsy.
I'll just keep it rolling.
The camera really doesn't do this part justice. This was a narrow and off-camber trench, and it was too narrow for me to bring the Trail Boss through. But Andrew wanted to give it a try, and he was maxing out his suspension in a few spots. One thing he learned was the importance of carrying speed, especially when you're getting some tires off the ground. But like I said earlier, off-road parks are great spots to practice and push your skills. After all, they did have heavy equipment available if things got too crazy. Ever since we first got here, we've been eyeing up the drag strip. It had been busy all day, but around lunchtime, it was finally our turn. It's hard to tell from this bird's eye view, but this wasn't a perfectly smooth racetrack. But it was a perfect opportunity to test out my new suspension at higher speeds. I had noticed throughout the day that the Bilstein suspension was doing a much better job absorbing bumps, especially compared to the Ranchos that I was used to. I was even more impressed here with the ability, especially to absorb bigger bumps at higher speeds. I felt like I had much more control, especially at those higher speeds, and it didn't feel like the back end was constantly stepping out on the washboards. I've said this before, and I'm going to continue saying this, these trucks should have come from the factory with the Bilsteins that I put on here. Now, obviously this wasn't exactly a fair race. Andrew's Jeep has less horsepower and larger tires, but it does go to show the benefits of a V8. Well, I guess that was a little deeper than he was expecting. Yes, he was only in two-wheel drive, but it gave us a good opportunity to use the kinetic rope. I ran it around the tow hook on the front of his truck, and ran the soft shackle around the hitch on my truck. I think we were both pretty surprised at how easily his truck came out. It looked like it was buried pretty good, but he said it felt pretty gentle on the inside of his truck. We figured after a successful recovery, it'd be a good time to call it a day. We got everything packed up, headed towards the exit. As we were doing that, we came across this Jeep. They'd come off the main road and got hide-centered. Another Jeep had already gotten a kinetic rope out. We just kind of stood and watched.
There you go. Drag it right across.
Luckily, this was a pretty easy recovery, but I think some important lessons were learned today.
Okay, it has been a couple of days since we got back from the Bundy Hill Off-Road Park. Got a good glass of whiskey sitting here. So let's go through exactly what happened on that trip. For those of you who care, this is the Maker's Mark FAE 01. I'm a big weeded whiskey fan. Always drink responsibly. So let's talk about off-roading though, because this isn't a whiskey channel. Number one, first and foremost, I think I need to eat some of my own words. I used to think that going to an off-road park was just driving around in somebody's backyard, and I didn't think that it really truly counted as off-roading. That is not true, and I think to say that is the same thing as saying going to a ski resort doesn't count as skiing. Just because you didn't get dropped off the top of a mountain by a helicopter doesn't mean you're not actually skiing. Same thing goes with off-roading in an off-road park. Now, granted, it may not be as intense as some of the trails, some of the overland trails and things. Intense, because if you're overlanding, you have to be in a tent, right? Otherwise, you're just going to the mall. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a good spot to work on our skills. And that was really the main goal here, besides testing equipment, was to work on our skills and have fun as some friends. So I think it was a great spot, and I highly encourage anybody that has access to an off-road park, go check it out. And it's a great spot, like I said, just to work on all of your skills in a semi-controlled environment. I mean, you could still get hurt there if you do something stupid, but there are tons of other people around, as you saw, that are willing to help. And they have heavy equipment if something goes too crazy. So they can always flip your rig back over and help you get pulled out of the mud, lift you out, all that kind of stuff. So now let's talk about the equipment that we were testing there. First, let's start off with the good. I was very impressed with the new Bilstein suspension. If you haven't watched the last video I put out, which you really need to go check that out, I installed a new suspension on my truck. This was sent over by Bilstein. It's a 6112 kit in the front. Those are the new coilovers, and in the rear I've got the 5160. Those are the external reservoir shocks in the back. Last video I'd only driven on the road, and even there I was very impressed. I noticed a huge difference, especially going around corners. I felt like it was a lot more planted. There was way less body roll, and even then I had more control, and it absorbed bumps, you know, the transitions to bridges and speed bumps and that kind of stuff. It just felt a whole lot better. But at the same time, it wasn't like a trophy truck where you go around the corner and you're like almost about to flip over because the suspension moves so much. So I was pretty impressed with that. I was curious to get off-road, and I noticed immediately that it did a great job absorbing the bumps. The big bumps it did a really good job on. Small bumps at lower speeds, it was probably about the same. But as you saw in the drag race, at high speeds, I had so much more control. With my old suspension, I would have been fishtailing around the back end, would have tried to pass the front end and all that, and that just didn't happen with this. So overall, I'm super impressed with this off-road. I'd like to get off on some more trails and more technical stuff and just keep pushing it, but so far, I would highly recommend this to anybody, especially if you're in a Trail Boss or a similar vehicle that's got that stock suspension from the factory. It's okay, but this is so much better. I gotta say it again, this is how it should have come from the factory. The kinetic rope from USA Rope and Recovery, that was awesome. That worked out so well. That's the first time I've actually gotten to use it, and I couldn't believe it. I thought something came undone or whatever. There was none of that. Like when you actually do a recovery with a tow strap, it's just super violent, and as soon as it gets tension on it, jerks you forward, and you're worried about ripping your bumper off and all that. This, I hardly even noticed it. I got to the end of it, and I kind of did feel it stretch a little bit, and I looked back, and he came right out. So I didn't have to feel like I was breaking anything, or, yeah, I would highly encourage anybody to get that. What didn't go great though is the new bumper. And I kind of had a feeling, I was a little worried that it wasn't super strong, super tough. I think it's definitely designed more for looks. I have taken that video down where I did the install and everything, where I was kind of supporting it. I can't say that I support the Armadillo front bumper anymore. Unless you're going for just looks, I would not spend your money on it. It's fairly expensive compared to some of the other bumpers on the market. I'm not confident it would do much to protect it. We had a tow strap around one of the bottom bars. Basically it bolts to the frame, comes out, and then there's a crossbar right there. That's where we had the tow strap around, and it bent that bar, bent the bumper around and everything. As you can see in this picture, it did a lot of damage to it, and I was not really doing anything crazy. There's another full-size truck that was stuck. He had just a normal tow strap on his bumper. I did a soft shackle around mine and tried to pull him out. And even when I didn't get him out, obviously, and as soon as I stopped, my buddy was like, yeah, it didn't look like you were really trying all that hard. And it still kind of destroyed the front bumper, which maybe this isn't designed for that, but you lose your tow hooks by doing this. So if you want a front recovery point, this is it. That being said, it still looks kind of cool, so I think I'm going to leave it on there for now. I am going to look for other options out there, so if there's any other options you think would be good, anybody's put something on it, has a real world review on it. Hopefully it doesn't mean you crashed and destroyed your front bumper, but if you've got a review on a bumper that you want me to check out, let me know, and I'll definitely look into that and see if I can get it put on there. With that being said, if you want to see me actually off the trail a little bit, check out this video right here of our overlanding trip that we took last summer. This was a week-long trip across the Keweenaw Peninsula.